Greetings duelists and welcome to another video. Happy 4th of July, America Day, however you want to call it. Um, a little bit of forewarning, there is a thunderstorm happening right now, so you might hear some lightning in the background. Hence, I won't be celebrating barbecues or outdoor activities like most people do with their 4th of July, unfortunately. Fortunately for you guys, that means I get to record another video. Um, so, last video I made, I talked about the deck of choice that I would have made for the WCQ if I were to go to the North American one this next coming weekend. Um, Today, what I'm going to do is explain every single reason behind this deck, every single reason why I would have played this, every single analysis I would have done if I were to play at Nationals, and probably like my main deck or side deck of choice, tech cards, cards that you should be considering, cards that you should be like taking a note of, or a little bit of tips when it comes to like your deck building. This doesn't have to do specifically with this deck as well. This could be helpful for you if you face um, the same ideologies that I have. If you want to play against the better decks of the format, the same way I want to do it, or if you end up even facing this deck at the North American WCQ, like maybe watching this video could be helpful for you because you already learned about a rogue strategy that is not common, and maybe you face it at an event and you just go, okay, I saw this video, I saw the combos, I know the choke points of the deck, I know like what should I do against it. I guess the first thing I'm going to do is explain like this deck. I've already made videos in the past talking about why Scareclaw Kashtira Adventure outside of every other deck. The number one reason is it's a one card engine deck that doesn't fold too easily to hand traps. What do I mean by that? So um, Scareclaw Lightheart effect to add Rhyphobia is not once per turn, and you can use another copy of itself if it's in the main monster zone. Not many people know that. A lot of people like they start like hand trapping this like right on the spot and without thinking if you have a plan B or not, and then what ends up happening is you end up doing stuff like activating Visa Starfrost, popping it off the board, or you get rid of it on the board with other cards, like for example like enemy controller or forbidden droplets, or like the Scareclaw Twin Saw for example. And then at the mid to late game you go and you relink into another one during the same turn, and then people just get caught off guard, and like that's already one card wasted that you don't have to worry about. um, Another thing to take note of is like a lot of people are afraid of this card, so if they see anything that can tutor this, they'll immediately try to stop it. And that's really good for you if you already opened multiple copies of this, because they already wasted their hand trap or whatever card they want to use on this, and then you just activate it, and then they already lost a card. Trying to like go even an advantage on resources, and then they just go minus. So like that's one analogy that I had when I was like building this deck. Another really cool thing, and this goes back to like the ratios that I'm playing. I feel there are no real redundant cards in this deck, because even if some cards are like hard once per turn, you just want them in your hand as additional extenders or additional resources for the next turn. Uh, right now, at the current format that we're at the moment, is very tempo based. Games are no longer just decided on the first turn like we had like a lot of formats in the past. Now people are like predicating themselves towards like what happens on the second, third, or fourth turn after your turn one, because now you're gonna have to have the mentality of people just being prepared to already break your board if you go first. You will have games where you'll have just a very, very strong board that is very, very hard to break, and people just don't have the right answers to it. But at least when my line of thinking with this deck is, I always want to be prepared for turn 3 or 4. Like if I go second, turn 4. If I go if I go first, turn 3. Or if you like counting turns from turn 0 to 2, then you can do it on that instance. So that's like one analogy that I had when like preparing myself with this deck. I just kind of wanted to be sure that if my opponent ever breaks the board or they just break all my interruptions, I just had a plan B. So another thing you probably noticed is I am not playing hand traps. The number one reason I'm not playing hand traps in the main deck, in this deck, and I've been doing it for the entire format, it's because of triple tactic talents. I think triple tactic talents as well as triple tactic thrust are two really, really common cards being played in a lot of decks this format, and just losing to these cards is or just falling victim to these cards is just not worth you trading advantage with your opponent. Like, these cards are pretty much going to help them more than it will stop them if you hand trap them or try to go 1-for-1 with them. Like for this specific reason, I really don't like hand traps, at least in the main deck, unless they're like really high impact hand traps like Droll and Lockbird, Artifact Lancia, Dimension Shifter, like lingering hand traps that just like do their effects for the turn. I'd rather have those than hand traps that just do a 1-for-1 trade with my opponent's resources, because at the end, if they do end up having talents or thrust, or having both, you are just going to fall to those cards, and like there's no guarantee that you didn't like choked their play like right on the spot. The other reasoning is, as people already know, Kashtira is pretty much like the best deck in the format right now. That deck really, really plays well into hand traps, not because hand traps cannot stop whatever they're doing, is because that deck has a lot of extenders, like Theosis, Birth, like just having an extra normal summon, just them not using their normal summons for their effects, like them resolving Rise Heart later in the duel, cards like those, they just make it so your opponent loses a lot of advantage if they just hand trap you at the wrong spot, or if they have the extender and you try to hand trap them without knowing if they have the right extender or not. It's really, really hard to read what your opponent's hands are when it comes to like a deck like Kashtira. So when you think one play is like the obvious play, it's not necessarily the case, because they might have something else that can contest as a follow-up play after you try to hand trap them. I guess one last reason is like I feel like in this format, there are not that many decks that can decide the game on turn 0, so you can get away with just playing good enough engines or board breakers that can just deal with your opponent like right then and there. One other reason for playing this deck is that if you see like the majority of my extra deck, they're pretty much link monsters. Like I do have some utility monsters in the extra deck besides just Link monsters. But the fact that this is a Link-centric deck makes it so you do not lose to Dimensional Barrier. Dimensional Barrier is not super popular, but it is a card that people need to take in consideration, because some decks just outright lose to it, and there's a ton of people that pretty much want to cover as many bases when it comes to many decks. Another common card that's been playing in side decks as of late is Super Grave of the Ancient Organism. And that card doesn't do anything if you're playing a Link-centric deck. So yeah, there's not many cards that serve as floodgates against Link-centric strategies outside of engine cards that are specific to some archetypes, like M-Pen, for example, or the Scareclaw Twin Saw that you already saw me play in this deck. Another, I guess, talking about Twin Saw, the existence of this card gives this deck a lot of value, because it makes it so you already deal with one monster type in the game, which are Link monsters. Even though cyber strategies are no longer popular, you still have the Live Twin Runic Sprite deck, you still have Dragon Link, you still have the Rikason Avalon deck. A few of those decks do play Link monsters, and they do heavily rely on them resolving for them to kickstart their engine. And the existence of this card just makes it really hard for them if they don't have an answer to it right away. Not many people are maining back row removal. They think their engine alone can carry them the first game, with a few non-engine cards that are made to just deal with your opponent's board. And this card just punishes them for that. Tryhard is a really strong boss monster. It pretty much shuts down a lot of non-Link centered decks. So just having it alongside the Twin Saw, it pretty much creates a soft lock where your opponent has to commit to unorthodox effects to just start contesting with your board. And the best part about this M board and this game state and this type of interruption is it does not lose to triple tactic talents. And that's very important, because if you know your opponent has it, or you're trying to read it, you can just make a board interaction your opponent is forced to deal with without you having to commit too much into it. So that's one notable thing there to take note of. So that's one other consideration I took when building this deck. One other thing about this deck is this is the best deck that can play the Brave Token engine. And the Brave Token engine is really good against Kashtira. A lot of people don't know that. A lot of people think that this engine doesn't do as well into boards like the Kashtira monsters do. Things to take note of when you're playing this engine. First of all, the adventure token cannot be banished face down, because the game mechanic that is in the game is basically tokens cannot be banished face down in general, not even by card effects. So cards that would specifically banish something face down, they cannot do it. So that you cannot Fenrir this, you cannot Arise Heart this, just to name a few things. And that's really strong, because your opponent pretty much is forced to deal with Faithful Adventure, or Dracoback, or Griffin Rider, or Illegal Knight. They have 4 cards to worry about with their current board state, because they cannot deal with the token. And that's really strong for you, because like in the off chance you open any of these cards alongside the token, or if your opponent is or your opponent does not have an answer to this, you pretty much can easily break their board because you have quick effects that like contest with whatever they're doing, and the Draco back is going to force a card to be bounced or sent away. So you can bounce Shangri-Era, you can bounce a Rise Heart, you can like deal with a lot of cards. So that's like a really good vantage point that you have, because Kashtira is the most popular deck in the room, is the most popular matchups, and like people are already saying that that deck is going to win North American WCQ for a plethora of reasons, which are very justified. The North American region really likes this deck more than others, so it is a surefire bet if you want to make it that Kashtira could win the event. And so far, my track record with Kashtira, with this deck, has been like over 90%. Like every loss to Kashtira that I have had with this deck has either been me breaking, them opening like a perfect hand. Like I'm talking about something that breaks the board, makes their engine work, and have guaranteed follow up for next turn, as well as like dealing with something that can contest me heavily, or they just have the right hand traps or board breakers. Like I've lost to a Kashtira player that opened Lava Golem every single game, and they open Lava Golem, enemy controller, Pressured Planet, like Birth Fenrir, or like or Theosis Unicorn, or like and you know, you're gonna need very specific cards to deal with everything they have if they just have the right cards to blow out you. But like on regular board states, on like regular games, I've pretty much have been doing very well with Kashtira, against Kashtira, and is that one of the main reasons is the Brave Token engine. Another really good reason is because I am main decking a lot of hate for Kashtira, like as a whole already. Like I'm already maining like these three cards, which is really strong. Like pair this up with the Braid Token engine, you have just too many cards that can deal with Kashtira. Another note that is very important is that a lot of Kashtira players are just activating Shangri-Era without knowing what the opponent is playing, and that's really good for you because you also play the Kashtira engine, and since you're also playing like 7 Kashtiras in your deck, that means your opponent has two things to worry about, because not only are they need to worry about your main deck monsters like being able to contest their board, but they also need to worry about the fact that they gave you a free copy of a Rise Heart, like with any summon. And like that pretty much makes it so if they try to like deal with part of your engine, you have another piece of your engine that can just break the board or contest the board. But yeah, like, and when I first built this deck, I was building it at the very end of a Chizu tier format, just because I knew that people just didn't have a proper answer for Tryhard. And then as the format progressed, and then Kashtira became more popular and pretty much became like the mainstay deck of the format, I just basically built the deck around the fact that you had to play against Kashtira like more often than not. That's why you see these specific cards here. If Kashtira was no longer an engine, or Kashtira pretty much dies as a deck, there are other engines you can play with the Scareclaw engine and the Break Token card that work just as well. like for example the Hero Lives engine with Prisma. Just to give one example. You can also just pair it with Vanadium and just have a hybrid, like a lot of people are doing with just Vanadium. You can pair it up with Bestials as well, since you don't have to worry about like them occupying the zone for the Kashtira monsters to be summoned. Like there's a lot of ways to adapt this strategy if they end up like hitting Kashtira. So this deck is pretty much future proof. Like for the next upcoming formats, as long as they just don't limit Lightheart and Rakephobia, I guess. Which I don't think is going to happen anytime soon because nobody is paying attention to this engine or strategy. So I already showcased you guys. Like in the past, you have a 1-card OTK with Reichhardt as long as your opponent controls a monster with at least 2000 attack. Not only is this a 1-card like OTK by itself, it's also a 1-card Baron plus an interruption and follow up. Like this, out of all the 1-card engines we have in the game, I think this is like one of the better ones because a lot of 1-card engines are decks that loses to Dimension Shifter, which is another reason why I built this deck. Like another important note that I took whenever I built this is what hand traps specifically like injure me. And right now, I can tell you right now, Dimension Shifter is not really an issue for this deck. You just need to learn how to play appropriately if you do get shifted. And there are plenty of ways to do that. Like for example, if you do open Reichhardt, a lot of things you can do is you turn it into Lightheart and you search the Twin Saw. You summon, you activate Rakephobia. Rakephobia grabs you another Skeleton Claw monster, and then you can just end on your board with just this, like on the Dimension Shifter. Well, this being the Lightheart, of course. Like you can just end on that, and your opponent pretty much has to deal with 2 bodies in order to like play around this card, and that's really hard for them to do. And you did this all under Dimension Shifter. It becomes even more complicated for your opponent if you open the Kashtira or Brave Token engine, because now if you do that, you can end on this like specific board alongside like Griffin and Token Negation, for example, or like Illegal Night Bounce or Fenrir Banish. Like so you can pretty much have a guaranteed play to interrupt your opponent even if you're under shifter. And the best part about all of this is that this part of your, depending on how you opened, you can end on having Rakephobia for next turn and just play your deck and full combo them after the shifter ended. Same thing with Arise Heart. Like if you deal with the Arise Heart, you can just start toolboxing your deck and start playing like with your current resources. So that's like one other like thing I took into consideration when I built this deck. Yeah, like the number one hand trap that is really hard for you to play against, it's Droll and Lockbird. Like to this day, this card is the deck's kryptonite. There's not really many ways to play around this card with your engine. The most general consensus you can do is if you start with your Brave Token engine, you can summon that or resolve that first. Try to get to like Griffin as quickly as possible. Or if you open the Griffin already, you can just summon the Griffin If you're really good at the game, you can like open, for example, like you can just open the Griffin alongside the right, or you can open with Called by the Grave, which is another card that we're playing. Um, and you like, it's not the best answers but to it, but it is still an answer nonetheless. You can make a game plan against Roland Lockbird and just side or main crossout designator. But my issue with crossout designator is like the game is way too varied right now, and there's not a lot you can do if they just like open the right cards and you don't, and you're just risking yourself another brick. Um, so that's like one thing when it comes to this deck. Um, I can show like a few combos as well. Like there's like a way there's like, I'm gonna show you like the best board I've made one time so far. Basically my hand was Enchantress, Unicorn, Fenrir. Um, and it's not really hard to have this hand. It's not really hard at all, because like with right, you're playing 6 copies of this. I'm also playing Flesh Burial, so that's 7 copies of this. You're playing Pressured Planet, so it's like a few copies of this, and it's also a few copies of this. And I'm playing 2 and 3. So you have multiple cards that act as copies of these. So this hand is like very, very common to have if you don't like, if you have like something else. But yeah, if you noticed, I did not open that like this. The combo I'm going to show you does not involve any Scareclaw normal summons, at least the level 3 ones, and it does not involve Reichard until the very end. You'll see why. So what we're gonna do is we're going to summon Unicorn. Take note, zone placement is super, super important when it comes to like what I'm about to show you. So you summon Unicorn, you don't activate its effect. Again, you're trying to play around roll. You're activate Water Enchantress for right. This could just be right, like it's the same thing. I'm just showcasing Water Enchantress because it acts as another copy of it. You activate right, you write for the token, and you activate Faithful Adventure. Next, what you're going to do is you're going to activate Unicorn's effect, and the Unicorn will add us Kashtira Birth. So we have Birthing Hand. This is engraved. Now what you're going to do is you're going to activate Faithful Adventure to grab Griffin, or Illegal Knight, whichever you wish. Griffin is always the optimal choice because you're playing Ixen Omnigate. And with the Faithful Adventure, you're going to discard the Fenrir. Now what you're going to do is you're going to summon the Griffin, and then Faithful Adventure's effect activates. You grab the token, you grab the equip spell, the Dracoback. Now what you're going to do is you're going to activate the Kashtira Birth. The Kashtira Birth is going to summon the Fenrir. It's very, very important you summon Fenrir in this zone and not this zone. You'll see in a second why. You're going to activate Fenrir's effect, and Fenrir will grab you. You're going to grab specifically Scareclaw Kashtira. So now you're going to normal summon the Scareclaw Kashtira. The Kashtira Birth makes it so you can summon it even though it's level 7. And now you're going to link this away into Lightheart. Now you're going to do Lightheart's effect. Lightheart is going to grab you Primitive Planet. You're going to activate the Primitive Planet. Primitive Planet is going to search. In this specific scenario, you're going to grab a level 3. It could be any of them. Ideally, you want to grab Acro, because Acro is the one that gives your Tryhard extra attacks. I mean, an extra amount of attack. Now what you're going to do is you're going to special summon the Acro. And now we're going to link away the Unicorn, the Lightheart, and the Acro. We send these three to grave. And you're going to summon Tryhard. Then the Tryhard effect, you're going to grab the Acro, you're going to summon it back, and then you're going to add Rightheart. Then what you're going to do is you're going to special the Rightheart. The Rightheart will activate. In this instance, you grab Twin Saw, but you can grab either Twin Saw or Arrival, whichever one you wish. And since you have multiple monsters in defense, you're going to draw one card. So pretend this is like the extra draw. And you can set the Twin Saw and you pass. There's one other thing you can do if you want follow up for next turn, and that's it. And that is you link the 3 Scareclaws into another copy of Tryhard. And then with Tryhard's effect, you bring back the Acro again, and then you grab another copy of Rightheart for next turn. So this 3-card combo ended on this board, and you ended on 3 cards in hand. Pretty good, I'd say. You have an Omni Negate, you have the Twin Saw interruption, you have the Fenrir interruption. This card is already flooding your opponent. Like, you're pretty much putting your opponent on, they have to break this board. In the off chance they do break this board, you have follow up for next turn. And you'll pretty much have a 6-card hand unless you decided to use other cards. That's like pretty much one of the best M boards I've made with the deck. It's not super common, but it does happen more often than not. And if you resolve this, it's really hard for your opponent to like deal with it. Trying to think what other things I haven't mentioned or haven't covered. I guess other things that I have to bring up is the fact that you can plus a lot if you open like other extenders. Like in the mid to late game, you need to understand that any Scareclaw monster or any copy of Arrival just gives you 3 bodies for free. Like, this card is essentially it becomes like a pseudo soul charge if you think about it, or Infernity Launcher, because what ends up happening is, like, I'll give you one example. Your opponent already broke the board that we brought up, and you have like the right card already, right? And we have like the Draco back, for example. You can normal this or special it depending on the situation. This will grab this. You'll link away this for Tryhard. Tryhard will grab you Rayphobia. And now Rayphobia will get you another body, and Arrival will give you another body. In a very very naughty instance, what you can do is you grab Visa Starfrost, and you can activate Visas, pop this, Visa Summon. This can special itself because Visas is on the board. This can relink itself into the last copy of Layheart, and this will grab you like the last copy of Rayphobia. Like it will add you a third copy of Rayphobia for the next following turn. And then what you can do is you Arrival, bring this back. You can turn these into like Baron or Angel, or if you decide to play a third Tryhard, you can play another a third copy of Tryhard. That is another option. And then what you can do is, like, if you summon any of these, you can banish these for the net. You can banish these and just summon this. Like, this deck just has a lot of resources that are very very expendable and easy to use. This deck can generate a lot of advantage, and this deck can snowball the game even after doing like a very insane turn 1 combo. Another note is, since you are playing Unicorn in this deck, you can end on one material Arise Heart. And if you already know what decks are really weak against Kashtira, you can pretty much make a judgment call and just summon this, and you just put them on better have the answer for it. However, this deck is very very different from regular Kashtira in the sense of, when it comes to like regular Kashtira, if they break your board, you're pretty much relying on extra copies of Planet, Birth, or Fenrir, like, or Unicorns to like keep playing the game, because you're only playing Kashtira as your main engine. However, in this deck, if they do get rid of your Arise Heart combo with your Kashtira cards, you have your entire Brave engine and your entire Scareclaw engine, like, just for the next following turns, if you want to use those. And as already I showed you before with the combo, you just have so much card advantage. It's so crazy. Like, it's just really really hard for your opponent to contest. So I think I brought up like almost all the reasons why I keep playing this deck and why I would have played this deck if I were to go to Nats. I guess we can talk about like the matchups, like what does this deck struggle against, what you should be prepared for, what would happen if you face this matchup or that matchup, etc, etc, etc. Like, the deck is, I already talked about Kashtira. The deck is has a very easy Kashtira matchup just because you have so many cards that are so good against them, and you just trade resources quicker than they do. And if you break Kashtira's board, you shouldn't be losing, because Stirclaw is like a one card engine that just gives you an increased massive advantage, or it can just outright kill your opponent on the turn. What other popular decks do we have? I guess there's Labyrinth. If you're playing against Furniture Labyrinth, you can start playing, like, you can play the Arise Heart game, and like they can pretty much struggle against that bit by bit. You also have like a lot, like, you have cards that can deal the advantage game against them, like the Adventure Engine. It's a bit problematic for them if they don't have enough ways to deal with your cards. Like, one thing I have to mention is, like, Illegal Knight is really really good in general, just because it can also bait the back row decks very very easily. So like, you just have a really really strong engine against them, like in the name of those cards. You have so many cards that bait interruptions out of your opponent. If your opponent plays with their monsters, which is like the most ideal thing that you want them to be doing when it comes to Labyrinth, they'll just play into Talents, they'll just play into Thrust, which is an issue for them. If they don't play with their monsters, that means they're only playing with their back row, and you have answers for those as well. Like Phobia can pop spell and traps. Like you have Phobia, you have Draco back. Like as another card that can deal with floodgates or cards that are face up on the board. Like just to name like a few cards that you have alongside your engine. So that's like one matchup covered. If you play against Sprite, that matchup is super easy for one specific reason, and the number one reason is they don't summon their monsters in attack. Like 95% of Sprite players, they have the habit of summoning monsters in defense, and like they're just going to play into Primitive Planet. If you resolve Primitive Planet against a Sprite player, they have two things to deal with. You the +1 out of the Rhyphobia, and you popping a card with the Rhyphobia. So that's already two cards dealt with when it comes to your opponent if they're not like really prepared for it. You're playing Forbidden Droplets in your deck, which is another really good tech card. The Talents and Thrust is another card that can deal with their board real easily. Kurikara, just another example. If you go first, you shouldn't be losing to Sprite unless they like have everything in the game to just break your board, because you have so many cards that can contest with their cards. It's very, very crazy. Like the Legal Knight and Twin Saw are just two prime examples. Like Castia Fenrir is also problematic for them. Your monsters are bigger than theirs, so they pretty much have to do a lot of leg room in order to deal with like your current board. It's another deck that kind of struggles against a Rise Heart unless they like start summoning Link monsters, and if that happens, they just fall victim to Twin Saw. You can make the argument that they have Sprite Smashers as an answer to this, but like Sprite Smashers can only deal with one card. They cannot deal with it. It cannot deal with everything. So yeah, the Sprite matchup is super, super easy. Branded just loses. Like I had a game at locals 2 days ago. It was against a branded player. He evenly mashed my entire board. I left only Tryhard. He built his board. He summoned a bunch of monsters. He summoned Mirror Jade. He resolved Albion twice. He did Sanctifier at one point. Like he did Grand Wignol. He summoned the Lulu monster, the Synchro. Like he fused with Cartesia a bunch of times. He branded in red a bunch of times, and then by 2 to 3 turns later, he realized he just didn't have an out to discard. Some of them do. Some of them do play like Banishment, and some of them play Super Polymerization. But outside of those cards, they really don't have an answer to Tryhard. Tryhard just wins the game. The same thing with Purely. If you're against Purely, this card is really, really strong because it turns all their monsters to defense, and that means they cannot Zeus you as long as this card's on the board. If they try to link summon as a way to deal with you, you have Twin Saw, so it's just another answer to them. So yeah, it's like Purely super easy. Like against the Live Twin Runic Sprite deck, that one's a little bit more hectic, just because Runic Slumber specifically is very, very annoying for you because it makes it so you cannot attack with the Tryhard. Outside of that, your matchup is not as hard because of the same interaction with Twin Saw. Like they just can't link away their monsters and make them work. They can protect themselves from Twin Saw popping their cards with the Hugin, but they can only do that so many times. Some people just waste their runic resources very quickly to combo off, and that's not really good for them. You do have like other cards that can deal with them, like your non-engine. So that matchup is a little bit annoying, but it's not unwinnable by any means. Like you have a very good matchup against them. If you're playing the Rika Son Avalon deck, the one that just won European Nats, Scareclaw Twin Saw just wins the game. They don't have a way to deal with this without their link monsters, and this soft locks them. So like you're pretty much good there. If you go second and they have Con with their monster interruptions, you do have cards to contest with them, like your board breakers, your talents, your thrusts are good. The Brave Token engine can be really good, can be a blowout against them in some specific scenario, because it's just going to force them to use their Con tribute interruption very early, which is good for you because that makes it so you can contest with summoning Tryhard. One other thing to mention is if you can get to 3 bodies and you can summon the Tryhard, their monster interruptions, the ones that don't involve link monsters, which is not that many outside of like the Lifetime Runic deck and the Fur Hire Runic deck, they cannot deal with this. Like you pretty much just break their board super easily with this card, because you cannot deal with this card with their monster interruptions. But yeah, like I could be all night talking about like a lot of decks that you can easily deal with. Dragon Link just loses to this. Like this interaction alone just wins the game against them, which is another popular deck. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I guess one last thing I'll talk about is side deck. Like some people are already making like side deck guides and combo guides, like when it comes to nationals. So I'm going to talk about a few cards. The cards I'm probably going to talk about are these. So this might become a hot take, or this might be a take that not many people can agree with, but I think Evenly Matched is a bait. I think if you don't have to play this card in your deck, you shouldn't play it for Nats, and I'll explain why. The number one explanation behind Evenly Matched is that a lot of decks are going to be preparing themselves for the following turn if you break their board. So evenly matching them means you're losing out on a battle phase, you're losing out on like potentially breaking their entire board. Like I only recommend evenly matched if the deck that you're playing can really make a board so your opponent cannot play the next turn, or just because an instant blowout. Because whatever you think this is good against, they'll just adapt to it. I'll give you one example. If you play against Labyrinth, there are some trap heavy versions of Labyrinth. However, a lot of cards that Labyrinth has and play are chainable cards. So if you try to deal against Labyrinth, what they're going to end up doing is they're going to chain all their trap cards. They're going to start like summoning monsters, start recouping bodies. After you resolve this, they can just summon Lady Labyrinth from their hand because you activated on trap card. If they have a set card that works alongside the Lady Labyrinth, they'll just activate that, and then they'll start recovering advantage slowly. And this you'll find a point where this card almost didn't do anything. Against the Rikas on Avalon deck, this card is really good. So if you are thinking about like rogue matchups like that one, this card can be really good. But against the more popular decks like Kashtira, Labyrinth, Dragon Link, you need to find a plan B and not rely on Evenly Matched, because those decks are just going to be very prepared for it. Like the life the Fur Hire Runic deck that gets a lot of advantage. They draw so many cards that even if you break their board, they're just going to like make it so they can still contest your board and play for next turn, and they get so much card advantage that is like so crazy. The Dragon Link strategy, we're probably going to summon a couple of Omni Negates against this. And if you do end up breaking their boards, that deck can recoup advantage with their bestial monsters, with spheres, Erratic Spheres tributing, Branded Regained, resolving, like Chaos Base resolving, and the tempo they can do just go to their favor if you don't have a strong enough engine to pair up alongside the Evenly Matched. Kashtira, same thing. They'll just keep like Kashtira Birth, for example. If they have Birth or Fenrir or Planet on their hand, like this card is strong, but it doesn't really deal with everything. If they have a Rise Heart, they can keep their Rise Heart, and you have to deal with that too. If they already used their Rise Heart, they'll just banish it face down, and they'll just summon Fenrir. They'll just keep Fenrir. Choke there, and that's just another interaction. But yeah, be very careful if you're main decking or side decking this card. Like, if you have other blowout cards you want to play for the format, for that particular event, you should prioritize them over Evenly Matched. Because this card is pretty much a bait. Cosmic Cyclone, this card is this, you should be playing this card. I think it's very obvious. Like, the number one reason why this card has to be in your deck is not even because of the back row decks. It's because games 2 and 3 you might face floodgates. People will try to flip floodgates on you just to cheese wins. Anti-spell fragrance, rivalry, there can be only one, summon limit, like cards like those. Those cards can easily win games if you don't side properly against them when you're going second. So be on the lookout when you're doing that, and just be prepared. So this card is pretty much a mainstay for those reasons. Pancratops and Duster are two very obvious ones. Like, these two cards are just really strong. If you go second, like, these cards bait interruptions, these cards can apply pressure to your opponent. The one that's not as common and not as obvious is Change of Heart. So in the format that we're at right now, I think Change of Heart is really good, because not many opponents are playing too many Omni-Negates or playing like cards that like deal with every single card you have. So just having a card that can steal their resources can literally swing the tempo of the game. Like, I would make the argument of even playing Mind Control alongside this, but between this, Mind Control, Thrust, Talents, you have so many cards that can just like deal with your opponent's resources, that is really, really good and really, really strong to just like do that. I I would prioritize this over a kaiju any single time. Um, like in my specific scenario, since I'm playing this specific deck, I already have an answer to like unbeatable towers monsters. However, like um, towers monsters are not super common in the format. Those you shouldn't be dealing with them super often. I sort of like added Nestor, and that's not a really common deck. Um, most monster interruptions that you'll see are those that like try to deal with your board. So stuff like this, enemy controller is another one. Like mind control is another one. Like all those cards are really, really, really strong. I really, really highly recommend it. Um, like like one example is, let's say you're facing Kashtira and the guy Shangri-Ira's you, like just change of heart, taking Shangri-Ira and turn it into a Rise Heart already like decides the duel, like right there and there. If you take the change of heart and you take the Shangri-Ira before you make the Arise Heart, your opponent will see that coming, and your opponent will probably do a Rise Heart to banish the Shangri-Ira. So you got rid of 2 bodies for the price of 1, just because of activating just a change of heart. Like, um, so that's just like a really, really strong card. Um, like against the dragon matchup, just taking like their dissivators or taking or baiting their heretic spheres or baiting like other cards, or it's just strong enough. Um, like against the Life Twin Runic Sprite deck, activating this and targeting like IP forces them to activate the IP effect. And now you got rid of 2 bodies. I mean, they traded 2 bodies for 1, and they could have the Life Twin right next to them. But if you have this alongside like Talents and Thrusts or Kurikara, that's already like a blowout against them. Um, so yeah, really, really highly recommended. I think you should be playing this. Um, if your deck can play these, you should play these 100%. Don't main deck these cards. All you're doing is you're going to fall victim to Talents and Thrusts. Like, it's not worth it. And if you face against Kashtira, these cards are not that great against them. You can make the argument for draw, but if they open Shifter or they already open their extenders like Theosis and Birth, like you're not doing too much with draw because they already have the resources they wanted anyway. So yeah, that's like my general consensus for those. You can play Ash Blossom, you can play Ghost Bell, you can play all those other cards, but I feel like in this particular format, hand traps that just trade 1-for-1s with your opponent are just not that strong. It's not a really good idea. Like, even if you're playing like a 1-card engine deck, you want hand traps that really just stop your opponent on the spot. Like if you're playing a Rika Sanavalon opponent, like resolving this or this is going to be way more impactful than just ashing a sowing or like valoring like a Jasmine or like or like stopping a Mudon from adding. Like these cards pretty much end their turn, or basically in theory you're making them lose out on activating multiple effects in the turn with these, rather than just trading 1-for-1. But yeah, this is a very, very long video, very, very lengthy. It's around 1 hour. I could talk about a lot of more cards, a lot of more things that could be in consideration, but I hope you find this informative. If you're watching this and you are going to a NAWCQ, very much luck to you. I hope you found this very, very informative. I hope you find very much success. Whatever strategy you're playing, whether it's be this deck or it be Kashtira or any of the top meta contending decks, I hope you found whatever I said very, very informative to you. But yeah, happy 4th of July. Keep practicing and keep dueling.